Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 8 of the virtual San Diego Latino Film Festival and our Q&A for our Frontera Filmmakers Documentary Shorts program. As I think you might have seen the intro, our Frontera Filmmakers program is usually one program out of composed of documentaries and narratives of films from the region, of filmmakers from the region. But this year was just an incredible amount of work, and there was still some great stuff that got left out, unfortunately. But we were able to expand our programs and maybe we were able to do narratives and documentaries along with a one program of 2 sports mid-length docs. But yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us again. And we're gonna have some great filmmakers again. To the audience, whoever's watching it, I want to remind you this is interactive. Even though we're far away from each other, we're all at home, or maybe you're at work or something. You're watching this on your break. You're more than welcome to send in questions, send comments on the films you watched. We welcome them, and then we'll try to get them answered to the best of our ability. But without further ado, I'm gonna be bringing in the filmmakers one by one. We're gonna be introducing them. We have Diana Schultz of Un Nuevo Capítulo. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Juan? Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. We have Olympia Vasquez Ojeda of Nyumshri Ke Makio. Did I say that correctly?
I think so. Yes. Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Then we have Crossing Over. Albert Salas Jr. How you doing, Albert?
Oh. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you for joining us tonight. And then from A Prayer Beyond Border, we have Ala Khan. How you doing, Ala?
Great.
Thank you for joining us. And then from Donde Dios Quiera, we have Kayla Mulholland. How you doing, Kayla?
Hey, buenas noches. Good, how are you?
Pretty good, thank you. To start off, why don't you all tell us where you're calling from? I know it's Frontera Filmmakers and the film has to do with stuff, but I don't know if you're all in the region right now. How about we start with you, Diana?
I'm actually in Denver, Colorado right now. So this is actually where I live. I had the opportunity I used to live in Southern California. And so when the opportunity came, I was granted access to go to San Diego. I hopped on a flight. Arrangements were just made so quickly, and I was just super blessed to have the opportunity to do that and finish it.
Awesome, thank you. How about you, Olympia?
I'm actually in Tijuana right now. This is where I live, and this is where I was born and grew up. I worked in the U.S., so right now I work digitally in the U.S., which is fun because I don't have to cross the border. But yeah, I'm in Tijuana.
Yeah, and is it still a little crazy as it was a couple weeks ago?
I mean, yeah, if you're not born in the U.S., you cannot visit the U.S. right now. So the border is closed for visitors at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Kayla? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Mexico City. We're 2 hours, so 11 o'clock here. But I was in the TJ San Diego area for about 4 years, and I just moved here a few months ago. So.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Well, thank you for joining us on what's a late night for you now.
Yeah. Yeah.
a late night Q&A.
Yeah.
How about you, Ala? Where are you calling from?
I'm currently based in Los Angeles, but at the time of making my film, I was based in San Diego.
Okay, awesome. And how about you, Albert?
Yeah, I'm in North Hollywood, California. So,
Oh, really? I'm really close to you.
all right.
Yeah, so one of the pros of doing the festival virtually is you don't have to leave. So if maybe, I don't know, if Deanna, maybe you're in Denver, we're all in different cities, sounds like, but we're able to connect for a little bit. Well, thank you so much for joining us. To start off, I'm always interested in the genesis of a project, and so I want to hear a little bit about how you started this. Why did you decide on this subject? How did you meet your subjects? If you had subjects in the documentary, if it was just a theme that you were looking for, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? We'll start with you, Olympia.
Well, I started meeting the pipeline women of Santa Catarina, which is a small town in Ensenada, through an archaeological project that I did with the Institute of Anthropology. So we were working on basically an exhibit that showcased how the ceramics that they currently do have been made through the same processes for the last 1,000 years, right? Like the fragments of what gets found in the field as ceramic fragments come from the same processes that the women still do nowadays, 1,000 years later. So I felt like that was really extraordinary and kind of surprised that a lot of people in this area didn't really know about them, didn't really know about like native indigenous living people in Baja California. So that's kind of how I decided that it would probably be easier to create like a video or some sort of film to talk about it and to showcase their work.
How about you, Deanna?
Well, for me, so I've been looking at the theme of yoga for social justice for some time now. I actually have witnessed several different people having going through experiencing the positive benefits of trauma-informed yoga or yoga therapy, and it's just helped them. So in delving deeper, I actually delved deeper into yoga. I have my own yoga practice, and the deeper I go, it's just so amazing to me how profound it and just how it can be used to help so many people. And when you talk about the issues of mass incarceration, and you look at that, and you look at the different aspects of why somebody might have, I don't know, committed a crime or for whatever reason they ended up in jail, they have an opportunity. In this case, the Prison Yoga Project attracted me because of what they were doing. They were taking their techniques into different prison systems in California. Specifically, there's the San Diego chapter. The executive director of the program actually lives there in San Diego. And they have this amazing program at Las Colinas. So what it is they're teaching them about self-regulation. And so when they become aware of when they're starting to get angry and they can utilize and learn these benefits on helping them calm themselves, it gives them an opportunity to make better decisions. And so what they found is that as people cycle through, and if they have the opportunity to take these classes, and once they are released back into society, it helps reduce the rate of recidivism, which is fantastic. And it helps them just have an opportunity to become a productive citizen and just make huge changes in their lives for the better. So I looked at it from the aspect of yoga for social justice, which I've done. I've completed a few more in this past year, and I'm working on a couple of others. And then looking at just how yoga, the benefits of yoga can just help across the board with so many instances.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. How about you, Kayla?
Well, my background is in visual anthropology. So before I take on any sort of documentary project, I spend many years in the investigation / lived experience side of it. And so for the last couple of years, I've been working as a social worker in Tijuana with the migrants. And it happened to my time as a volunteer in a migrant shelter down there happened to correspond with the caravan and the migrant protection policy that the Trump administration put in place, that was to leave the majority of the asylum seekers who were from Central America, to leave them in Mexico while they were awaiting their asylum hearings in the U.S. And while I was working as a social worker in the shelter, I followed the story of a woman and her 4 children who were trying to seek asylum in that really difficult time, and were just had many obstacles put in their place. And at the end of the film, they were able to make it to the U.S. So got to follow that trajectory, and that's how it was made.
Wow, thank you. How about you, Ella?
Oh, for those of you who might be watching and don't know what my film's about, just quickly, it's about the meeting place in Friendship Park where, it's about communities that are able to come and meet each other in Friendship Park in San Diego, Tijuana, and that being the only place on the U.S.-Mexican border, and specifically about the border church that was established 11 years ago that kind of helped facilitate that space to be kept open, and about the Muslim community joining Christian community to have a bi-national, bi-religious prayer service for the first time. So the kind of seeds of that are, it is very personal for me. I was approached not only about making the film, but also actually establishing and founding the Border Mosque. So I am producer and director of the film, but I also consider myself a community organizer and helped with the community building around that. And that is the community I am part of. So I attend the mosque in San Diego where the Muslim community is representative, and then the Latina Muslims in it are all really close friends of mine that we got closer during that process. But being able to tell the stories of just the people inspirational in my community that I had really admired the work of was a really amazing opportunity.
Wow, thank you. How about you, Albert?
Yeah, so my film is it's a short documentary on just 3 women's experience. The 1984 McDonald's massacre. They basically lived in Tijuana, and they went to cross the border just to eat hamburgers for lunch, and they got caught up in the massacre, and one of them was killed. So it's just their account on what happened and how it affected their life. How I got involved was I did the co-producer, Alex Dominguez. About 15 years ago, I did a music video for him. He's a musician. And we were talking, and he told me, oh, I have a cousin that was at the massacre. And she starts telling me about her experience. And he said, I'd love to do a project about that. So, I was younger then, and I was very eager. I was like, yeah, let's do it. So things happened. Him and I lost contact, and then we reconnected about 5 years ago, and we explored it and completed the project. But I'm glad that we waited, because a lot of the times it's all about timing and my experience. So I felt like I was more experienced now to handle it than 15 years ago, especially with this subject matter. So
yeah, it seems like a subject matter that has no end, right? Like a lot of the films here, actually. But I guess as documentary filmmakers, I think one of the interesting thing is, in narrative filmmaking, pre-production is writing shot lists, making, doing script notes, etc. But like in documentary filmmaking, it's a lot of pre-production with your subjects or with who you're gonna shoot, getting them comfortable with the camera, getting the story kind of. Now, I don't want to say baiting for answers because that sounds like you're trying to look for stuff, but trying to get them to give you the best answer in camera, right? So why don't you talk to us a little bit about your process and what were some challenges in there, or maybe you really enjoyed it, maybe it was your favorite part of the whole process. But we'll start with you, Ala.
Yeah, we had a really unique situation with our pre-production. We had less than 2 weeks to put together an entire crew and the event itself. So it was very quick. I actually hadn't even worked with any of the crew before either, so it was like a brand new like meshing of people. And one of our main concerns was actually logistical, because we did kind of have 3 crews. We had one on the Mexican side, one on the US side, and one crossover from the US side to the Mexican side. And they're the ones I stayed with, but I was directing all 3 via phone and WhatsApp and stuff. And then obviously dealing with the Border Patrol on the US side, because we filmed right up against the secondary barrier. So we did run into problems with that. My cameraman's gear was taken away, and we kind of expected that. So actually a lot of those close-up shots are on his iPhone, but we knew that was going to happen. We kind of anticipated a lot of it, and I'm just so grateful for my crew for willing to put themselves and their gear kind of on the line to capture the story. And in terms of like you said, preparing the subjects and getting the material you wanted, I don't know, Kayla, I love the name of your film. I feel like maybe that answer for me is Como Dios quiera, because honestly, everything that we planned, all of the things we had kind of scripted, or the interviews that we did that were more formal, we ended up using the stuff that was off cuff, actually, way more. We kind of had practiced or kind of rehearsed some stuff with our subjects beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
But I also let them speak kind of from their heart on camera, and that's the stuff that was really moving, especially the last few lines in the film, which I find really powerful. In the beginning lines, that was not scripted at all. That's just the people in the film were just so incredibly passionate about the subject and just really spoke from their hearts. And it's a faith-rooted film, so there was, I feel divine inspiration amongst all of us. And actually, just interestingly, the Puerto Rican imam who speaks in the film at the very beginning, and who does the call to prayer in Arabic, he wasn't even supposed to be in the film. He showed up that day and was just going to attend the prayer service. And I met him and was like, you are an incredible person. I want your voice in this film. Can you step aside and just talk to me for 5 minutes and I'll prep you? And he was game, and he actually ended up being a really important voice. So things just really came together in a really incredible way. And I'm just so thankful to have worked with people that were willing to just go with the flow. And that's what documentary is about. So amazing experience, really.
Yeah, it sounds like the stars aligned.
Yeah, it was an insane one day shoot too, just because it's a documentary, but it's also an event. It's kind of event coverage in a way too. It was a very set amount of time that we had to film just based on the event itself.
Wow, well, that's awesome. Thank you. How about you, Albert?
Well, our experience was a little unique because Lupe, the main subject, she was very nervous about doing this, and she hadn't talked about this in years. So it took me and Alex had to go down to San Isidro a few times to talk to her and get her comfortable. So when she finally agreed, sitting down for the interview was very nerve-wracking for all of us, for her too. So we try to make her feel as comfortable as possible, and what I like to do is I like to sit my subject down while I'm lighting or doing, technical things. And I just like to bring up a conversation, just talk to them about normal things. And then before they know it, we're rolling, and then we're just going, we just naturally go into it. This one was a little unique because I don't know Spanish, actually. I know poquito. And so I had 3 people there that knew Spanish, so they were basically my translators. So I wasn't able to really communicate with her directly. So, but we got through it, and she did great. I give her a lot of credit for going through the whole process, and I think she was happy with the end result.
Oh, awesome. How was editing for you?
Yeah, that's another thing. I had to get all the raw footage translated before I can cut it.
Oh, okay.
And then from there, so basically we had all the subtitles, all the hours of footage, the subtitles created, and then from there I cut it. And then Alex knows Spanish, so he helped me out. And then I had other people come in, and it was, it took pretty much about a 2-year process to edit it.
Wow, yeah, it takes a village, right?
Can I ask you a question about that, Albert?
Yeah. Sure.
Because I have edited in Spanish too, and it's not my first language, so it's very difficult. Was there any consideration of getting a Spanish-speaking editor to do the majority of it?
Well, we didn't really have the budget for that. So, we had to, I'm the one that edits, so we had to really, but definitely, I thought about that. So.
Good job.
Thank you. How about you, Kayla?
With my film, there were a lot of kind of roadblocks and challenges. Initially, just logistically, I had a DP a lot set up that was someone that I have trusted a lot, that had a really good reputation, and we talked for months about how we wanted to shoot and how the film was going to look and feel. And he and like 2 weeks before we were supposed to shoot, his visa wasn't approved because he's Chilean and he was in the US. So then he wasn't able to go to Tijuana to shoot the film, which was kind of ironic because it was a film about migration, and then my DP couldn't make it to shoot. So at the last minute, I was trying to find a DP. And then when, as that was just the logistical side of it, but in terms of challenges for the actual film, I mean, kind of like Albert mentioned, when you're working with vulnerable population, that it, they either, a lot of people just don't want to be filmed, especially about this subject matter. And in my case, I had asked several women if they would be interested in sharing their stories, and a lot of them said no. And the one woman that had said yes, she said that she would share her story, but only under the conditions that if I wouldn't release any of the footage or the film unless she made it to the US because she was seeking asylum. And she knew that if the people that were threatening her back home knew where she was, then she was at risk. And so I had to navigate those dynamics as well. And just knowing that if she didn't make it to the US, which was very likely at that time, then, I wasn't going to be able to use her story, or I was going to have to do it without showing her character or children, which if you saw the film, that they're pretty powerful images, and her story was really tragic and just very emblematic of what the experience of the is. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess as a filmmaker yourself, that was a big risk because, like you said, at that point it was a very you didn't know what was gonna happen. So to me, she's like the anchor of the story, right?
Totally. I mean, my plan B was just I'm gonna make it more experimental and not show her face,
Okay.
But
you had a plan B, but
that was the plan.
Well, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. How about you, Deanna?
Well, for me, because my characters were inside a jail, I didn't have that luxury of getting to know who I was going to be interviewing, who we were going to be shooting, filming. So the way we approached it was I had this certain vision of how I wanted to do the documentary. I was in communication for quite a while with the San Diego Sheriff's, County Sheriff's Department. And eventually they granted access. So I came to this requesting an interview in Spanish with a Spanish-speaking inmate, and then also with an English-speaking inmate. So I actually shot two stories in one, and the one in here is the bilingual piece. So I didn't know who I was interviewing. We had to provide, literal list of what we were taking in, and they would approve it or not. We could take in, my DP could take in some equipment, some couldn't. It just it depended a lot on what we were granted access on taking in. I didn't meet my subjects until we were inside the jail. And so we were in restricted parameters from the standpoint of, I think we were there for 2.5 hours, maybe 3, and then actual shooting was 2 hours, the 1 hour for the yoga. And then I had 1 hour, actually about 40 minutes, 20 minutes with the Spanish speaking interviewee, and then the 20 minutes with the English speaking. So, and then I don't know if you noticed in the film, the room we had a whole wall of mirrors. So shooting was interesting. We got there, we're like, oh, okay, how are we going to do this? And so we really had to do a lot of stuff on the fly. The vision of the project was already done, and I had an overall idea of the questions I wanted to ask, but it wasn't until I sat down with the individual and got to know her story, I mean, like quickly. And that's where I'm thankful I have over 15 years experience in the news industry, because you have to, come up with those questions right away, get to know your people right away, and just ask questions. So that was super helpful, having that background within this particular story. So although there was a lot of restrictions, it was just so special to be in there. Sometimes, just people make mistakes, and everybody is deserving of a second chance or a third chance, whatever it is. And it's a lot of the people that I met that day, they grew up with unfortunate circumstances. And that's not an excuse for anything, but it is the reality. And to be provided with an opportunity such as this, where a lot of people spend so much money doing these types of classes and whatnot, it was amazing. Just to see the transformation from walking at the start of the class to the end of the class, that was amazing in itself, just in there. And so the interviews, lucky for me, were done after the yoga class, so they were already pretty mellow. So that was nice. But yeah, we worked around a lot of restrictions, but we got through it, and just moved on and created the pieces as best as could be done.
Yeah, that sounds really stressful. Such limited time to shoot. You're like, and then I'm guessing it was just one day, right? You said.
Yes. So actually, we had 2 hours. So let me see. We got there. Actually, we had a total of 3 hours. We had an hour for them to look at everything before going into the jail, because they had to put everything through security. So that took some time, a lot of time. And then we finally got in, and I think we had about 30 minutes to kind of look around and figure out, okay, how do we want to shoot this? A lot of it was handheld, because there's a lot of movement, the camera, the glare, the lights, there was, it was interesting. A lot was done on the fly. And then they were very, very strict about what time they could come in and how much interaction we actually had with them. So we had to have everything ready to go so that they could just bring the inmates into the room. Everybody got their yoga mat, sat down, and they just started class. And
Well,
so,
I guess, what was the process like to get permission there? Did you say you have to go through the sheriff's department, but did that take a long time? And did it help? Like, were you in contact with the yoga teachers? Did that help you get in there a little quicker?
So I actually have a pretty big background in yoga. When I lived in LA, I did a lot of classes, and so I'm actually a student of also the yoga therapy program with Loyola Marymount University. So I just love all this, and I just a life learner, taking everything in. So when I attended, I was at a yoga therapy conference, and I came across a pamphlet, Prison Yoga Project. I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And so I had an opportunity right at the tail end. I mean, literally for like maybe, I think we spoke for about 15 minutes. And his name is Bill Brown. He's the executive director of the Prison Yoga Project. He resides there in San Diego. And I was like, I am so amazed with your program. And after that, when I left the conference, when it was over, it was just there. I was like, I have to do the story. I have to do it. And so I started actually trying to see if we could get into the prison system. But because I didn't have distribution, they only give access to people who already have distribution, and they would have needed a letter from whoever it was, Netflix, ABC, whoever the entity is that's the distributor. They would have needed a letter from them. So that was out the window. But I didn't give up. I didn't want to give up. So I got in contact with Bill Brown, had an amazing conversation with him via Zoom. And after that, I was like, okay, he said, look, we have these classes here in San Diego at Las Colinas. And I have to tell you, I am so impressed with that facility, Las Colinas, because they have so many programs there to help people turn their lives around. The yoga program is just one of them. There's actually a college program, I think it's called Rebound, and it's connected to, I think, the San Diego college. It's either university or their college. Anyway, it's one of those. It's an amazing campus. They really, really try very hard to help with rehabilitation before people are released. And how amazing is that? Because it really reduces, reduces the rate of recidivism, reduces the rate of returning.
Yeah,
It's such an issue here in the United States, right? So.
definitely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Olympia?
I think if I still remember the question, I think that I have some like similar stories, I guess, especially around language. Daria, who is the main character in the documentary, she's actually, she speaks 3 languages, but her last one is Spanish. So she grew up speaking her native Pai Pai language. She then learned the Koa language, which is another one that has less than 5 speakers in the world. and then she learned Spanish. So she definitely didn't feel the most comfortable speaking Spanish. I mean, she did, but like not necessarily on camera and for a documentary. And I do not know Pai not did, any of the crew did, right? Like later we were able to contact a person who studies linguistics, who has worked with the Pai for several years, who was able to, like, I would send her like little recordings asking like, does this say what I think it says? And then like via messages, she would try to translate for me. But I've noticed that when I ask her questions in Spanish, she would kind of like give me really short answers. But then when she started speaking Pai, she would just go on and on. So I'm like, yeah, I definitely have a way less exciting answer in Spanish. So we try to like elaborate on those, and yeah, I guess I don't have the 15 years of experience, but I'm definitely a talkative person, so I try to use that for asking more questions and getting her to elaborate on what she was saying. But one thing that also was like our lucky side, and it reminded me of what Ala was mentioning, is that the one of the weekends where we were filming, her granddaughter came, and she's actually a teacher who grew up speaking Spanish, but who's also very like proud of her Pai culture, and who also understands the ceramic process and all the native traditions of the town. And she's a teacher, right? So she like explains things beautifully. So she became like almost like a co-main character, because she was able to give us like additional insights to what the like elder, her abuelita, was providing. So I think that like having her come that weekend out of nowhere, and then being open to answering questions and just elaborating more, made the whole thing like round and holistic. But also it reinforced how this tradition is passed from generations to generations, but also from women to women, right? Because that's something that I was very like pushy about. I wanted only women in my crew, and I wanted only women on my camera. And it wasn't 100% women, but close to like 90 something. So I think that I was really excited to just have such a fantastic character join out of nowhere, and having that openness to say, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it.
I think that's interesting. You say that you wanted only women in your crew, because there's that point in your film where they talk about how only women make the pottery in their culture. So it's just kind of like you're kind of like taking it back from like an industry that's like predominantly men. And at some point, it was just only men. So I like that. I don't know if I don't know if you did that on purpose, but
no,
but I guess
I mean,
I like it.
yeah, I'm glad you noticed. I guess I did ask questions like, do you think this is a women only activity, and what are your thoughts around it? And I could tell that those like trickier topics were harder to discuss, right? That's when she would be like talking really, really loud, and then she would say like, well, but there's sometimes like machismo, and like really, really low. So we definitely like pumped the volume up in the documentary, so you hear that part. But I was excited that we were able to kind of have that conversation as well, kind of in relation with the tradition, because I don't think they're separate things, right? Like, I'm not making a documentary about pottery. I'm making a documentary about the Pai Native women and how they are cultural agents, and pottery is one of the multiple things they produce.
Mm-hmm. You said it was through an anthropology project that you met them?
Yes. Yeah.
So are you an anthropologist? Is this your first film? Are you predominantly an anthropologist?
Yeah, I would say that I'm not a filmmaker. I am more so, I guess, like a researcher, and nowadays an educator. But yeah, I studied anthropology. My focus was actually more on archaeology, and the archaeology of northern Mexico, which is like nothing very popular, I guess, because it doesn't mean like crazy pyramids and all these touristic sites that we think about when we think about Mexico. But there is archaeology, and it's the archaeology of like hunter-gatherer people, the archaeology of nomads, the archaeology of people who like roam around the area, and the descendants of those people are the Pai Pai, are the Kumeyaay, are all of these groups that are still alive on both sides of the border. Even like the Pai Pai who are in Ensenada, who's like over 100 miles out from the border, they have a language that it's very well, like it's linguistically linked, or it understands well with a language in Arizona, the Hualapai and the Yavapai languages, right? Because these people were part of the same community at some point, and then through years and years of migration, now we have a group in Mexico that perhaps doesn't speak English, but could understand well with natives on the other side of the border through their ancestral language. So there's just so much to explore there. This is just like a tiny bit, and it was really stressful and really exciting. So I'm like, we need more people to come to more exciting things on this area as well.
Yeah, super interesting. I like to think of filmmakers, either narrative or documentary filmmakers, as kind of like sociologists in a way. You are all kind of seeing people, studying them, and either through documentary filmmaking you're documenting them, or through narrative you're kind of figuring out how what will one character do or another. And I mean, film is such a strong tool for social change. And so I wanted to ask, what was some of the what would be like some social change that you would want to do with either this film or maybe another film in the future? What is your goal? Like, are you interested in using film as social change as a tool, or are you just more interested in telling stories? I think they're kind of related one or another, even if you don't want to, or you're not trying to do that. But I just want to hear from all of you. So we'll start with you, Deanna.
So yes, I love telling stories or having the opportunity to tell stories. However, it would be nice to have a call to action as well. And for this particular project, so these organizations, a lot of the yoga teachers, they're volunteers, and how they operate, it's on donations, right? To keep these organizations going. And there's so many organizations doing different things. This one just happens to take, trauma-informed yoga techniques into the prison system or the jails. And it's just wonderful. And so for this particular film, it would be nice if people would follow up to check the organization out and see for themselves. And what the organization asks, especially now with COVID, because they can't go in, right, to do the classes, but they have these books. And if somebody just purchases a book, that book will go to an inmate, and they actually study this stuff in jail, and it's amazing. And they read these books, and so the books don't cost very much. And if I were to ask for a call to action for people, especially since it is really needed more than ever with COVID for so many different across the board for so many different things, is to look up the organization Prison Yoga Project. And if they have an opportunity, even just to buy a book, believe me, that book is going to make a change in somebody's life. And in turn, when that person is released, guess what? It's going to make a change across to other people. So it's one book at a time, one breath at a time, and one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And, so yeah, if I can make a pitch for the organization in this particular case, I would love to.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Albert?
Sorry. What was the question again? I'm sorry. It was just basically like social change. Well, in this project, I didn't want to get political. You know, you could easily get political with something like this because of gun control. So, I put a graphic at the end saying that at the time that was the deadliest mass shooting, and only 21 people died. So I just like to tell stories, and then wherever it goes, I like to make people think. So in a way, I guess deep down, I'm looking for social change, but I don't do it I do it in a subtle way. And maybe later on, I'll do another project that's more straightforward or more down your throat kind of thing. But I think in this project, I think people could, especially with we released it last year, with everything going on, I think it definitely has to do with what's going on in the world. So,
thank you. How about you, Kayla?
My film is definitely meant to promote social change and to get people to understand and act. I would say starting with initially the original issue was that the Remain in Mexico program, as they call it, the official title is a Migrant Protection Protocol, was a program that the administration put in place in order to keep the asylum seekers in Mexico while they awaited their hearing. But the reason for doing that is because they knew that if they presented that kind of barrier, they wouldn't be able to make it to their hearings in the US, because most of them being from Central America, they didn't have community or family in Tijuana. A lot of them do have community family in the US. No money, they're literally fleeing violence and for their lives. So the fact that they were stuck in Mexico meant that most of them had to find another route, which as we know means potentially crossing illegally and continuing to risk their lives through the desert, or having to go back to their country where their lives were at risk, which is why they came in the first place. So the original issue was the migrant protection protocols needed to be dismantled. It was a completely unnecessary barrier, and asylum has been in place for so long. There's no reason that we can't accept refugees and asylees in the US. Since the migrant protection protocols were put in place, there were over 60,000 asylum seekers that were sent back to Mexico to await their hearings, and less than 1% of them actually were able to get into the US and make their hearings. The woman in my film was one of them, and that's because in the film you can see that Jewish Family Services from San Diego came to Tijuana and actually helped them get through. And if it wasn't for the attorneys, holding their hand through the border, they didn't stand a chance to make their hearings. So that was the original call to action. But at this point, it's the fact that since COVID began and the administration back in March has halted asylum hearings and is not even accepting asylum cases. So at this point, we have to push our government officials, and we have to insist that not only asylum continues to be a program, but also that the migrant protection protocols is dismantled. And hopefully in November we'll have a new president. But honestly, it's local. It's local. It's pushing your local government. It's looking for petitions to sign, and also your state officials. So it's not just the president. It's at every single level. We need to be caring about. I mean, I know that we're all overwhelmed with the amount of issues that are going on right now, but just signing that petition or making it clear to government officials what the population wants and manifesting, like in Mexico, when there's an issue, you see people in the streets like every weekend. In the US, I don't know why, but we don't protest things in the same way, and we need to be pissed off because it's not fair what's going on.
Yes. And just a side note, just a reminder, this is a pro voting festival. So whoever is watching, remember, if you're not registered, yesterday was National Registration Day. So check make sure you register to vote and vote this November if you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it has to do. It's the same reason sometimes we have so much trouble with COVID here, right? It's just it's our culture, I think, and it's something that might change in a certain future. But I think it's like you say, like we just have to continue, and like change happens at home, and just kind of start from there and grow outward and hope for the best. But yeah, but anyways, how about you, Ala?
Okay, activism. Okay, yeah, I definitely consider myself an activist filmmaker. For me, community empowerment and social change and storytelling and film art are linked. Storytelling can be like an incredibly powerful vehicle, not only for social change, but for empowerment. So in particular with this film, I really wanted to diversify the narrative around who's affected by immigration reform, and also to highlight like the deeply rooted place that faith has in activism as well. And then also with such a heavy topic, also I wanted to like show some hope, some unity, some like stories about bridge building and unity, because there's just so much more community collaboration and coalition happening than people realize, but then also we need more of that. So to show that on screen felt would be like a point of hope for people. And then also I love what Olympia said about like being conscious about like her crew and who's also on screen, because that was really important to me too. I had almost exclusively people of color on my crew, which was hard to do in a 2-week time frame. Definitely, and I'm really happy to see like women filmmakers on this panel, and I'm really appreciative. Yeah, it's great, and I'm really appreciative of platforms like the San Diego Latino Film Festival, who are really like using that platform to uplift these stories and these voices. Like so, for me, a lot of my work, I hope, is that not only like increasing representation on screen, but really behind the camera too. Because we like communities need to be empowered to tell their own stories. Having someone act in a script written by a white man for like a woman of color character like doesn't make sense. We need to tell our own stories. We need to be in control of our own narratives. And there's just like so many stories that someone not in these communities wouldn't know even exist. They can't have that imagination to like tell these stories. And so for me, that isn't just documentary. Like documentary is a great way to tell stories about things that are happening, but I think narrative is a really big part of that, because imagination and like depicting what you hope to see in the world, and like that imagination and fantasy is is equally as important to me. So I hope to maybe delve into that, or haven't done it yet, hope it to delve into that realm as well. But just such an incredibly like powerful source of empowerment, storytelling in all forms. I didn't start off as a filmmaker. That's just the genre I happen to be in, but yeah. So thank you everyone for this film festival.
Thank you for letting us screen your film. But Olympia, how about you?
I agree 100%. I think that I like my current discipline is more education, but education in the sense of like community empowerment and community engagement. So I feel like film definitely falls into that as well, because it is a powerful vehicle to show stories, but also to kind of like get youth motivated, right? It was way easier for my students to perhaps watch this film that come into a museum and look at the vessels and try to get around this whole reconstructive like archaeology of Baja California, right? So I feel like through the film I was able to make the women of Santa Catarina visible outside of Santa Catarina, and hopefully empower their work. And so it's not just about what they do, but also how can we connect with that. And so after that, there were like lots of initiatives or people interested in visiting Santa Catarina and visiting like maybe doing a pottery class that could end over there, like creating some sort of camp around it. But unfortunately with COVID, that's kind of on the stops right now, because I don't want us to come in there with our COVID, especially in such a small town that it's predominantly elders who live there. But now one of the things that have happened after the film is that we are, and it's not just me but other people too, have been able to distribute pottery that is made in Santa Catarina outside of Santa Catarina, so that it can be sold in the US, it can be sold in Tijuana and in other places too, and obviously through like fair trade, so that the vessels do not just stay in this town, but they can also travel somewhere else. Because I think it's also an issue of I guess cultural understanding. As I said earlier, a lot of people who were born and raised in Baja California do not know that there are native communities who are still alive and who still have their own traditions, who live in towns that are not the big cities. So even just having that conversation and how that plays into what understanding of being Mexicans is, right? I think like lots of Mexicans do identify with the Aztecs and with all these like big native warriors, but we forget that there's all these other groups that are still alive, that are not in our 100 pesos bills, but are just as significant and valuable because they have contributed so much to our history locally and nationwide. So I do hope that by showing stories like this that are produced by people of color, but for people of color as well, we get to have conversations that are around things that I think matter.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. Yeah, I think you brought a good point. I mean, I personally didn't even know that there was these groups over there, and it's ridiculous because I'm from San Diego, and I know like there's indigenous groups here in San Diego County, and like I made that connection, but I never thought about like south of the border that there's also these groups. I never made that connection in my mind. And then I watched that movie and I was like, wow, like there's so much. Like whenever you watch something, right, you're like, there's so much out there that we don't know, and we forget and we close up ourselves up in our bubble. But I took an hour of your time already, so I don't want to take that much more. Kayla probably wants to go to bed. It's really late for her. But before we go, we're gonna do. I'll have a question for you. It's gonna be a lightning round. You have to answer it. There's no chickening out. Very quickly. I'm gonna ask your favorite movie. You have to give me an answer. I don't want to hear more. There's so many. You have to name one. So we'll start with Diana. You were the first one to look away, so.
Spotlight.
Spotlight. Okay, cool. It's a good one. How about you, Olympia?
Spotlight.
Reporter. Okay.
I really don't know. I know I'm sort of being lame. I do remember when I was young, a film that really like motivated me or got me excited about movies in general was a Spanish film called Noviembre, about this like theater people. I don't know. That's the one that came to mind.
That's a valid answer. Yeah, if it maybe it doesn't, it's not your favorite, but it's what motivated you or got you interested in film. That works. Kayla.
One of my favorite films is Tempestad by Tatiana Hueso.
Oh, okay, it's a good one.
Super good.
Yeah.
Highly
recommend.
recommend.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cheat and say two. Tambien La Lluvia and The Matrix.
Okay, awesome. And then how about you, Albert?
Well, I have many, but it's gonna sound weird. Terminator
2.
That actually got me. I was a teenager, and that took me into this direction.
Awesome.
So that changed my life. Yeah,
that's great. So thank you all for your answers. Again, for any of the audience that's watching, if you enjoy these films, the best thing we can do for these filmmakers, for these amazing filmmakers, is share their films, share their stories online, help spread the word about them. Again, maybe we can't help them get distribution, but maybe we can help them get funding for a future project, and get them noticed one way or another. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your films with the San Diego Latino Film Festival and our audience, everybody.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Juan. Yes,
Thank
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 you for everything.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.